Hey guys, welcome to Mr. Smith's Kitchen. Brian, Mr. Smith Kitchen, as always. And today I thought we would make a flapper pie. If you caught yesterday's dinner video with the skillet beef enchiladas, you already knew that. So, or at least had an inkling of a clue. And we're doing, like I said, a flapper pie. And it is essentially a cream pie or a custard pie. What I'm gathering is more cream. I've never made one really. It was very popular in the prairies of Canada, and pretty much any small prairie town you went to through the 1920s, it was there. But it's actually been around a lot longer than that. It was around during the Elizabethan times and the Edwardian times, which was in the 1800s, all through the 1800s. And it was known as a mock pie then, or a custard meringue pie. So it gained its name flapper pie in the 20s to represent the freedoms of women by the women who were called flappers. They were kind of rebellious to the standards of the day. They cut their hair short. They smoked and drank in public. They wore short skirts. They were rebellious for their day by most, maybe kind of tamed by today's standards, but in the 20s, that was very rebellious. That stuff just wasn't, a thing. So this was like a celebration of them. Not many people know this pie. I didn't even know this pie until a few days ago. It popped up on my feed online. And I thought, ooh, that sounds interesting. And I read a brief history on it. And I thought, okay, let's try it. So I found a recipe. And we're gonna work it. All the recipes are pretty much the same. There's not a whole lot of variant to them. The original flapper pies from like the Elizabethan age had a standard pie crust. These have a graham cracker crust. So that is pretty much the only difference between the two, really. You don't really need any tools to make it with. I mean, as far as like a mixer, you don't need a stand mixer, you don't need a hand mixer. I am going to use my stand mixer for part of this. My hands are killing me. For those of you new, I have a lot of arthritis. And at times my hands get worked. And I'm about to work them a little more with this pie crust. So anyhow, that being said, if you're new, this is your first video, welcome. I'm glad you stopped by. I hope you get something out of this video, all my other videos. If you're returning, thank you. If you're one of our new subscribers, thank you. Our neighborhood has grown by leaps and bounds, and I find that amazing. Hands down amazing. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And comments, always welcome. Just be civil. It's okay to disagree, just think before you type. And I think that's it. I will give you all your measurements in tablespoons, teaspoons, and also in grams and milliliters. That way we can all play along. And yeah, so let's get down to the counter and let's get this thing started. All right, hold on for me 1 second. So the first thing I did was take my pie plate and I went ahead and I buttered it. Why? Because the original recipe said so. Well, the recipe says so. I'm not sure why, but I did. Because it said so. So I got ahead, just rubbed it down with some butter real quick, set it to the side. In this bowl, we will need a couple bowls. I have 300 grams, 3 cups of graham crackers that I crushed up the old school way. I just simply took a freezer baggie and my rolling pin and beat the hell out of it till it became crumbs, right? To this, I am going to add 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, which is a gram, and 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg, which is, I'm going to guess, just under a gram because my scale couldn't make up its mind if it wanted to stay at 0 or be a gram. So 1 teaspoon, I'll just call it 1 gram for fun and adventures. Now, you can probably do this in a food processor also. I just thought it would be fun to do it by hand since we are, since that's the way the recipe called for it. Right here I have 4 tablespoons of butter, and I've got it at room temperature. You want it to be squishy, and I've cubed it up into little pieces, and we're just going to put that in there. On top of that, And then there's a couple ways we can do it after this. If we don't use our food processor, we can do this by hand, by simply taking the butter once it's in there and just kind of mixing it in and squishing it like that. Or we're going to do it the way I'm going to try it, which I know I've gotten better at. I don't do it a whole lot. And I'm just going to use a pastry knife, a pastry cutter. And we're just going to do this like this until we get a bunch of pebble size, a little bit bigger than sand, maybe like a sugar, pebbles out of this. That way we know the graham crackers are coated with butter. And like I said, you could just as easily melt your butter and put it in the food processor along with all this stuff. But we're gonna try it this way. All right, so we got it all crumbled up in pebble size, just like such. I mean, you can still see little chunks of the butter in there, and that's okay. I think that's the way that it was meant to be. So the next thing we need to do, let's get away with the pastry cutter, is we're going to put our pie crust in our pan. And hopefully this wasn't made for a deep pan, but I don't think it is. Because, I mean, I have deep pans, but I didn't grab one. I have yet to see a pie recipe that recalls for a deep pie crust. So we'll go ahead, let me get the glove on right quick, so that way we don't get our hands dirty. But we're gonna flatten this out even in our pie crust, and I'm gonna say it probably goes to a deep one, but we'll see. And we wanna take it up the sides and along the bottom. And if you see me with a different pie crust, it'll be because I'm about to change them out. All right, I'll see you here in a second. Okay, so we got our pie crust together, and all we gotta do now, I'm just gonna stick this in the fridge, and we're gonna go ahead and start making our filling as the very next step. So give me 1 second to throw this in the fridge, and then we'll get moving on the filling. So, in order to make our filling, now that we got our crust in the fridge, the filling is fairly easy. All we gotta do is take a saucepan. I've got a medium-sized saucepan right here. Let me move you up so you can see maybe a little better there. There we go. Alright, so we got a medium-sized saucepan right here. I've got it warming up already. And right here I've got, excuse me, 1.5 cups of milk, whole milk. You can also use half and half if you have it. And we're going to put that in here. It's 365 milliliters, or 1.5 cups of milk. And we're going to turn that on. We want to bring this up to a slow simmer. But to this, we're going to add a half a teaspoon of vanilla bean paste. Now, if you don't have vanilla bean paste, you can most certainly use vanilla extract. Just go 1 full teaspoon. All right, the bean paste is a condensed version. It doesn't have the alcohol in it that you would find in vanilla extract. Most extracts are made with alcohol. Bean paste is not. And it's really concentrated. So you only want to use a half a teaspoon. And then give that a good stir real quick. Get that mixed up. And like I said, we just want to bring this up to a simmer. As soon as we see it simmering, we can use it. Meanwhile, while that's simmering, we're going to go ahead. I've got 4 egg yolks in here, although you can only see 1 actual yolk. There are 4 large egg yolks in here. To this, I'm going to add directions. I'm going to add 1/3 cup plus 1 tablespoon, or 82 grams of plain old granulated sugar. And then we are going to start whipping this. We'll go ahead and whisk it together until it's combined. All right. So the next thing we need to add to this is the recipe really says 1 heaping tablespoon of cornstarch. I'm going to determine that 1 heaping tablespoon of cornstarch is 15 grams. And we're going to go ahead and get that in there. And now we're going to whisk this together until it's smooth. Okay, so, excuse me. Our milk, in this case, now if you're using half and half, which was the other thing you could use, and it can happen with milk too. as you'll start to see bubbles around the edge with milk, that's how you know you're where you need to be. I mean, you can let it go a little longer, but with half and half, especially with creamers, you can start to form a skim over the top. If you get that skim or a skin coat over the top, just go ahead and peel that off before we do our next step. So now that I got the bubbles around the edge, I'm starting to steam. I can see some things moving around in there. The milk is starting to circulate. I know I'm about as hot as I want it to be. So the next thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna turn my stovetop off for a minute, and I'm gonna slowly pour this in while I whisk it. That way, we're basically tempering our eggs, but we're tempering it with the entire thing of milk. All right, so we got it combined with our egg mix. So now we're gonna go ahead and pour it back in the pan, just like such. We're gonna put it back on the stovetop, just like such. And we're going to continue to cook this down until it starts to bubble and thicken. So, and we're gonna wanna whisk it that entire time, but I am gonna use a different whisk now because I don't need it to be moving as quite as fast. So we'll go ahead and get this start to bubble and thicken, and then we can move on to our next step. All right, we are thickened and bubbly. Let's take a look there and see. So, I don't know if you can see it on camera or not, but when I first poured this in there, it was very foamy on top. And now you can see it's not foamy anymore. A sign that your custard is starting to thicken, the foam disappears. And then after that, you've got like a heated pudding. So what we're gonna do now is we're going to get our custard, our pudding, so to speak, into a bowl, just like such. And we want to try to get every last drop. That's a lot of love in a bowl. Nothing healthy, but a lot of love. All right, so we got that in the bowl, just like that. And get it off the spatula there, just like such. And then we're gonna take some plastic wrap and we're gonna put this over it, but we're not gonna just lay it on there like this, all right? Reason being, we don't want a skim coat on top of that. If you do get one, you can always peel it off, but it's so much easier to just lay your wrap right on top of that filling like this, and then we can stick this in the fridge right next to our pie crust. So we want to get this to cool. We don't want it to be cold or it'll turn into pudding, but we want it to cool when we go to put it all together. But the next thing we need to do is go ahead and make our meringue topping. So let me get this in the fridge, get the stuff set up for the meringue topping, and we'll be moving on. All right, hold on. Okay, so our pie crust is in the fridge along with our filling. Next thing we need to do, make the meringue topping. So remember those 4 large egg yolks that we had earlier when we made the filling? Here's its whites. So I've got four egg whites from the large eggs that we had earlier. We're gonna go ahead and put those in there. And then to that, we are going to add some cream of tartar, half a teaspoon, which is 2 grams. Now I'm gonna show you, in case you don't have a scale to weigh with, if you fill your measuring cup, or in this case, measuring spoon, a little higher than it's supposed to be, and then just take a knife or something flat gently across it, that'll give you the proper amount. Which in this case, like I said, is a half a teaspoon of cream of tartar, and then we're gonna need a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Now, where you can run into problems with this versus using a scale or grams, and a scale and grams, is like in that cream and tartar's case, if I didn't go gently on it, or the actual act of scooping it can press down, compact the, in this case, cream of tartar, and give us more than we need. So then we've got that 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1 gram, to our 4 egg whites. Now the only thing we have left to do is we're going to go ahead and start beating these until they're a soft peak. Alright, we want to get that cream of tartar and that salt in there good with it. The cream of tartar acts as a stabilizer. So what I'm looking for now is to get these to start to turn to soft peaks, and in the process they're starting to foam up now, starting to form those peaks, or a soft peak, which means they're not going to really form much of a peak at all. I have half a cup, 100 grams of sugar, just plain old granulated sugar, and I'm going to take that 1 tablespoon at a time and sprinkle it in, and I'm going to continue to do this until we have full peaks, stiff peaks, and I'll show you that in the end. Alright, so in case I didn't mention it, you want to work your way up to a high speed. Highest speed possible, whether you use a hand mixer or a stand mixer. You can also do this by hand. Alright, so we've got it mixed. I don't know if I just mentioned it or not, but the cream of tartar is in there as a stabilizer. It won't let you over whip it. But see how our peaks are standing straight up at attention? That's a stiff peak. So now that we got that done, we can go ahead and get the mixer out of the way. So the mixer just makes quicker work, even if you're using a hand mixer. Go ahead and get this out of the way, and I'll bring all the stuff out to so we can start assembly. Okay, so we've got our pie crust is chilled. Our filling is cool to the touch, which means I can hold it, right? You don't want it to be blazing hot is a concern. If it's blazing hot, it will not do a whole lot to the pie crust, I can imagine, but the meringue does not like super hot. It doesn't like super cold, which is why those egg whites, if I didn't mention it, are at room temperature. Just like everything else that's dairy or egg, room temperature unless otherwise noted. So the next thing we need to do is take our pie filling, our vanilla custard, and we're going to go ahead and put it in the bowl, in the pie crust, just like that. Although I feel like everything's a little uneven. I would almost make double at least 1.5 the custard. But that's alright. This is how we learn, right? Because the directions did not say, oh, either way. I can't tell you the custard tastes amazing. And you know what, there's some okayness to that. So we want to get this out smooth. So it's nice and even. That way there's equal parts in every bite, so to speak. If you leave your custard sit in the fridge a little too long, it'll harden up. Not harden it, but it'll firm up enough. You may not have quite a smooth custard in the long run. So we got that in there, and we will take our little offset spatula here and wipe all this off so we can get as much as we can. We don't want to miss anything. And then after we do that, we will take our meringue and we're going to go ahead and put it on top. One thing I forgot to do, turn my oven on, 350 degrees. We should have done that when we started making the meringue. Because what we're going to do is we're going to put this in the oven, not long at all, like 5 minutes-ish. What we're going to do is we're going to brown the top on this. Now, you can turn your broiler on, just like we did yesterday for the enchiladas, and to brown it, but this recipe is a little different. I know with my banana cream pie, I believe it is, it's got the meringue on it. I just use the broiler for a couple minutes, and it takes it, pretty much to the top. Yeah, I think I personally would have done just a little more filling, or maybe I just needed a pie plate, because they didn't specify a pie plate size, but potentially just not a deep one, but not a shallow one either. So that'd be what, like maybe a 1.5 inch pie plate? I don't know, but that's all right. So we're gonna get this smoothed out on top, just like such. Okay, so we got our meringue on there. Now, if you want to do those little, like, whips, I'm still learning how to do them, but I was told just to lay your spatula flat and give it a flip, and it should give you those little points. I mean, I prefer to just kind of make it look nice and interesting like that, but you can do it however you would like. You know, you just make it smooth. But that is, like I said, I'm not good at it because I just read about it, how to do like the little tips and points and stuff like that. So we'll go ahead and get this done. So now what do we got to do? Well, we're just going to put this in the oven, and I'm going to say about 5 minutes, but depending on your oven and how warm it runs, it may take a little less time, a little more time. But what we're looking to do is just get light brown highlights on here, is all we're trying to do. Okay, so I went ahead and I threw her in the oven, 350 for 5 minutes, and it turned out gorgeous. I don't know if that lighting does it any justice really, but I have seen some nuances that I think have changed it. Now once I pulled it out of the oven after 5 minutes, I just set it on the cooling rack over here for a couple hours to chill. Now, according to the recipe, you eat it at room temperature. It didn't even give any refrigerated instructions, but I'm going to say whatever you don't eat will probably be good for a couple of days. Just throw some saran wrap over it, or plastic wrap or whatever you have, and keep it in the fridge. The problem is with most meringues is they like to sweat after about 24 hours. So after I got that done, I let it cool. We're to this point now. The crust I don't think is holding very well. I didn't think 4 tablespoons of butter was going to be enough. And I could be completely wrong once I cut into it, but I don't think it is. And if that's the case, I'm going to recommend you use 7 tablespoons to the 300 grams of graham cracker. But at any rate, all the same, I know it. I mean, it looks fantastic. It's cutting okay. Yeah, the sides are not holding very well, but like I said, we'll see. I did read one guy said that presentation is sloppy on these, which concerned me a little also, but I wanted to see, you know, this is how we learn. And this gives us the opportunity to fix things, right? So let me find my pie scooper here. Like I said, I know the crust is, at least on the top part, is very crumbly. Now I don't know what the bottom's going to be like, but we'll see. Yeah, that's all right. So I'm definitely going to say let's run with 7 tablespoons of butter. We could even melt it down. Matter of fact, if you go back and look at some of my other pie crust recipes, I'll just leave my pie crust, graham cracker crust recipe in the description down below instead of this one, because I'm not a fan. It crumbled and fell apart, but there's our interior, and the vanilla custard held together nicely, and so did the meringue. The meringue looks wonderful. It's just the crust. You know, because there's our inside right there. You know, like I said, it held together fantastic, and the meringue looks, you know, like meringue. It looks really good. It was just that crust, and even Chris noticed it when she came out here and looked at it. So that being said, all the same, we are going to give it a try, because I want to know what it tastes like, and we know how to fix it, right? So like I said, I'll leave you my graham cracker crust recipe in the description down below, but I would go ahead and use the vanilla so far and the meringue, they're doable, they're workable. But that way we can have a solid crust all the same. It's really good. I mean, if you could get past the fact you gotta kind of put the crust into the custard. Although it really is more like a pudding than a custard. But our could be because it doesn't get refrigerated. I think I would like to work on this just a little bit more. But it definitely has potential. Yeah. That's solid flavor. Very much so. Now, I could have redone this video and made the crust right. But I wanted to show you it's okay to fail a little and see what you can do better the next time. That's part of the importance of baking, you know, is learning. What was your learning experience on this? Well, I learned that even though that recipe is a good recipe, the crust is not. So, we learned, now we know. We're gonna go with 289 grams of graham cracker. We're gonna go with 7 tablespoons of butter. We're going to smash up the graham crackers. We're going to melt the butter and put it together like we would for any other pie. Another thing I'll probably do is pre-bake the pie crust. This one did not. I have not really ever put a pie crust of any kind in the fridge. This has never been my gig. I've always either pre-baked them or baked them as we went, but we didn't bake this pie, so you know how that goes. Yeah, but anyhow, give this recipe a try. I mean, you can even try it the way it is, but I would, I'd try it with the modifications. Like I said, I'll leave the modifications in the description down below with the graham cracker crust that works, because the rest of it works just fine. And let me know what you find out, or what you think, because the flavor is out of this world. I mean, it truly is a good pie crust. I just, you know, or a pie crust, good pie. You know, flatbread pie is the way to go for, you know, for being old school. It doesn't taste very old school, it tastes very modern. If you don't like meringue, I did read some of them put a whipped topping on it, so you can make your own whipped topping and put that on there. Either way, but next week, I have no idea what we're gonna do for dinner, for dessert, any of that. I very rarely do, I know. But we'll figure it out. I'm sure it'll be good. I'm sure it'll be tasty and filling and not real healthy, as always. So, that being said, like I said, leave me a comment down below if you try this or you have a different recipe. I'll leave all the ingredients listed down below as always. But when it comes to the crust, I'll put my crust on there and not this one. So that way I know you'll have a good crust. But until next week, I love you. I love you very much. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Tell somebody else you love them and you love them very much. It's gonna make them feel a whole lot better. It's gonna make you feel better to tell them. And they may need to hear it, right? And if you make them one of these flapper pies, you know, with this crust or my crust, they're gonna love it all the same, and it's gonna lead to some conversation. So, till next week, I'll see you then, all right? I love you. Talk to you later.